Hello, I'm Kim Dodsworth, and I've got another 10-minute short story for you. Sometimes a hasty decision can have devastating results. That's the theme of today's sad and sensitive story by Queenslander Kent Smith. It appeared in Australian Short Stories number 36, Pasco Publishing, 1991. The story is called The Eye of the Beholder. It's not possible for me to recollect scenes from my childhood without thinking of the old Moreton Bay fig tree, which was such a prominent spectator of that stage. In the years since I left the farm, it has, at least in my memory, grown bigger and grander. Its glossy black-green leaves are thick and lush, and the small tart red and yellow berries cover the branches and the carpet grass below. The rainbow lorikeets and blue mountain rosellas gorge themselves on the fruit, and at dusk clouds of flying foxes set off from the topmost stories on their nocturnal raids of the pawpaw, mango and lychee orchards in the district. On the rare occasions when I've been drawn back to the farm for a baptism, wedding or funeral, I've expected to see the real tree dwarfed by the romance of memory, and each time I avoid disappointment. After greeting Auntie Beryl and Pop Albert and eating their scones and drinking their black tea, I sit for a time under the bougainvillea arbour with Jackie, my cousin, who is simple as a child. I always enjoyed talking to Jackie because he's so familiar. Despite this, he's still a mystery to me. I never know whether he's stupid and his talk meaningless, or if he has been touched by the hand of God and sees truths that I can't even glimpse. Last time I was home, he took my hand. He's 37 years of age, but it doesn't seem strange to hold his hand. And he pulled me out into the backyard where he wanted to show me a butterfly chrysalis he had discovered in a passion fruit vine on the fence. We squatted on the blue couch grass while he fingered his find with an astonishing gentleness. "It's beautiful, isn't it? I found it last week, and I come every day and touch it. Here, you feel it." I softly touched the chrysalis, taking care not to break it from the leaf it is adhered to. It's silky and shiny feeling, but I can't find in it the wonder that Jackie sees. His grubby, spatulate fingers reach out and caress it. I talk to it. I tell it that when it opens up, it'll be a moth. It'll be one of those big, beautiful night moths with spots of red and orange on its wings and long, soft, hairy legs and eyes that'll watch me at night when I'm in bed. And you know, when I'm asleep, I can make myself turn into anything. I'll make myself into another moth, and we'll fly out of the louvers and see how high up in the sky we can go. We'll head for the moon, and when we're tired, we'll just flutter back down to the house. Jackie always talks like this. I don't listen to him much. Nobody does. I think he likes it when I come home. He takes me to see all his favourite trees and animals. I like it too, because many of them are my favourites as well, and with Jackie I don't have to feign a grown-up indifference. We usually make our way through the wooden gate into the paddock and head towards the fig tree. The lower branches are pulled down by their own weight, almost to the ground. Some of them have dips and rises in them, which made perfect swings for us as children. I remember one time with Jackie and the McNamara boys from the farm over the hill, we swang and swang and swang until our swing branch snapped off and threw us all in a heap in the grass. After we found we weren't hurt, we laughed till we cried. Our tears were of laughter, but they also contained grief for the loss of an old and cherished plaything. We had to find another low branch on the other side of the tree to be our swing after that. There's one branch a little higher than the rest, with a wide bump in its middle. This bump is conveniently at back height for the horses, and over many seasons they've polished it smooth with their rubbing. Small black, grey and chestnut hairs have been rubbed into the knobbles and bumps of this branch, and when I rested my head against it, a strong, warm smell of many generations of horses flooded my senses. At the end of summer, sometimes after there had been several days of steady rain, we'd hurry out early in the morning to collect mushrooms under this tree. We had to be early before the cows trampled them. We'd fill up a billy can and then take them up into the house, where Auntie would inspect them closely, throwing out those which looked likely to give us what she called hollow collusions. We never knew what this condition was, but for Auntie Beryl it was a serious matter. It's indicative, I suppose, of a certain naivety of childhood with which I still invest the farm, that I've always assumed that because this fig tree is of such importance to me, that it is so for the others too. I've never really analysed my feelings about it. It's always been there, just as Pop Albert and Auntie Beryl and Jackie have. In the same way that the farm would be diminished for me by the loss of one of them, so also it would be by the loss of this tree. And I never suspected that my reality may not be theirs. Not so long ago, Pop Albert had to come to the city to visit a specialist. I couldn't drive up to Coochie to pick him up, so he came down on the Greyhound coach. I met him at the bus station, and when I identified him in the crowd, it came as a shock to recognise him as an old and frail man. He was the same Pop Albert I'd always known, but less self-assured. He was looking around for me, and when he saw me, I fancied there was a quickly veiled expression of relief on his face. I hadn't been in the city with him since I was a child, and then he seemed so self-possessed and confident, and I the timid and unsure one. Now the years had reversed the situation. This was my home. I belonged, and he was a stranger from a distant land. For the 2 days of his visit, I shepherded him around. He chafed at being dependent upon me, and was irritable and rude. I let him ventilate in this way, and I remembered times as a child when I had sorely tried his and Auntie's patience. We drove back to Coochie after his business was finished. As we leave the city and head north, Pop Albert's spirits improve. The taciturnity of his past days gives way to his customary garrulousness. Much of his commentary strikes discordant notes in my soul, but I keep my patience on a tight rein. When we reached the front gate, I stopped the car for Pop Albert to get out and open it. He stood holding it open while I sat stunned. The tree was gone. Where it stood, there was nothing at all to indicate its presence there for over 100 years. Just a stump, cut off a couple of feet from the ground. I drove through the gate and waited for my grandfather to get back in the car. I knew there was no point in revealing my shock to him. It'd be incomprehensible. So I simply asked, "What happened to the fig tree?" in the blandest tone I could adopt. Day before I left, I had to get Colin McNamara over with his chainsaw to cut it down. The roots were clogging up the drains. Your Auntie Beryl was complaining that it was taking too long for the sink to empty. That fig tree wood is useless for burning. It was a beggar of a job loading up all the branches and dumping them down the bush. Took us 6 or 8 trips with a tractor and trailer. I drove up the track to the house, passing the place where the tree had been. I was not yet able to comprehend its absence. I seemed to remember some law of physics that when matter is displaced, something else rushes in to fill the gap. But in the place where I had swung, where the horses had rubbed, and where Jackie and I had sat for hours while he told me the names he'd given to the parrots, he'd named hundreds of them, with strange names like Sugarwood and Wattlewing and Happy Glass. There was nothing. Just a hole in the air. Before I'd even stopped the engine, Auntie Beryl came waddling out of the house, wiping her meaty red hands on her apron and talking loudly and wildly. "I tried to call yous, but you'd already left. There's been an accident. It's Jackie. Oh, Pop, you know what he's like? Always mooning off down the paddock for hours on end." To my complete surprise, she started to cry. Auntie Beryl never cried. "Calm yourself down, woman, and tell us what happened." I knew that Pop Albert was more alarmed than angry, but he could only express his feelings in the negative. Auntie Beryl steadied herself with one hand on the wooden houseyard gate. She took a deep breath. "He went off before breakfast. He'd been real funny since you left, Pop. The first day you were away, he spent the whole day out on the stump of that fig tree. When he came in, he'd been crying. He hasn't cried for months, and not in the daytime for years. You know yourself that these days he only cries after a bad dream. I asked him what the matter was, and he went on with some piffle about the parrots getting lost because they'd be looking for the fig tree and wouldn't be able to find it. I told him the parrots weren't that daft, but would he listen? He was out on that stump yesterday too. This morning I heard him go out early while I was lighting the fire, but he didn't come in for his breakfast. I called him and he still didn't come, so I went to look for him in the paddock." She started crying again and wiping her eyes and nose with the end of the seersucker apron. "I found him in the dam. I had to call Colin McNamara over to pull him out. He knew he wasn't allowed in that dam, Pop." If Auntie Beryl was looking for comfort from Pop Albert, she was searching in vain. "Come on, let's get these bags in the house, and then I'll make some telephone calls," he said. I left them and went over to the raw, ugly stump of the fig tree. I sat down on it and surprised myself by crying. Like Auntie Beryl, I never wept. I didn't know who I was grieving for. My simple cousin Jackie, the tree I had loved, or the parrots he had named and who were lost because they were looking for the tree and couldn't find it. And that was The Eye of the Beholder by Queensland writer Kent Smith. I'm Kim Dodsworth.